So if you haven't watched part one, I highly encourage you to go and watch part one, simply because there's a ton of context that you will definitely miss if you choose not to watch that one and jump straight across to part two. So, part one, I kind of acknowledge, like, hey, these are some things that I look for when I cross-country flight plan. So to preface, basically we talked about traffic, terrain, clouds, and airspace, as well as a little bit of chart symbology and what to look for with the airports. So those are just some key important things that I like to look for. And we are cross-country flight planning from Northeast Florida Regional all the way down to, what is this? Macy Ranch Air Park, X50. Now, so this video, I kind of wanted to do things a little bit different than I had originally mapped out. We're still going to kind of follow the general consensus of the first map that I had, where like we would do part 1 through 5, things like that. But I'm probably going to do 2 part 2s, just because getting into performance, getting into weather is a little bit challenging. So today we are going to look at weather, right? So I like to look at the map first, which is what we did in part 1. So we looked at the various topics that I just brought up a second ago, and map those out and go, okay, here's how we can get from point A to point B. So for getting to point A to point B, that was terrible English, my sincerest apologies. So in order to get from point A to point B, we decided that we would follow the coast. And the reasoning behind that is simply because there are enough landmarks that we can use on the way from our departure to our destination. There's enough landmarks, we can literally just follow the coast all the way down, and we would determine that we would pretty much be clear of all of this airspace except for the Charlie, but that's okay because we're going to call it flight following. Okay, so now for the weather portion of this, a few things with weather that I want to talk about here. Now, weather can be dangerous. So let me just preface this. There are certain things that me as a pilot and an instructor that I'm specifically looking for, and there's things that you should be specifically looking for too. This video will cover the general principle of weather, okay? I'm not going to go into extreme detail of symbology, all of these weird different things that probably might be irrelevant to this. So this isn't like a weather theory, weather chart lesson so much. It's just, hey, this is just a simple weather briefing. Now, there are 2 ways that I like to get my weather. Okay, so the first one is a self-brief using aviationweather.gov. That is what we are going to use today. The second one is using Flight Service Station. And using Flight Service Station, I'll call in, get a report. There's pretty much like 3 different briefings that you can get. There's a standard briefing that says, hey, at your flight time, this is what is gonna happen, and it's not for an extended time, it's not for short time. Now there's also an Outlook briefing. So an Outlook briefing will say, okay, hey, for your flight plan in the future, this is what you can expect. Okay, so it's for like an extended period of time between your call-in date, or your call-in, like the second you call in, and the departure time, if that makes sense. And then there's also an abbreviated briefing, which is kind of like before takeoff, where you're like, okay, the METAR says this, the TAF shows this type of thing. So they'll do that for you, and it'll just be like super simply and abbreviated. Alright, so my laptop just came unplugged. I kicked the plug out of the wall. That was interesting. Anyway, so we're just going to do the aviation weather.gov briefing. So I drew my flight path, and all I did was, I don't know why it's showing up as dark again, but anyways, we're gonna try to see what we can do here. Also, on my laptop, I don't know what it is, but the map shows up as dark, which I'm sure I could change a setting somewhere, but the METARs do not load in the observation section. So this will be interesting, but you would typically find METARs in the observation section under weather. So we can see, I'll just start by using radar here. We have a general consensus that there's a storm south of us, right? Now we can look at our radar here, but so that could be of concern. I'm not going to rule out flying or not flying based off of this weather pattern right here. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper here. So next I look at prognostic charts, okay? So I'm going to say that we are leaving in 6 hours, okay? Like right about 6 hours. We'll kind of track the weather for the next 12 hours though, okay? So when I'm looking at a prog chart, I am looking for pretty much everything you're looking for, right? So I'm coming to the general area of my flight plan. Now, I like to look at prog charts first because they show, in general, where the weather could be and what could potentially be going on, what I could expect. And then I kind of dissect further and go, okay, this is what's truly going on. Am I going to go? Am I not going to go? Okay, so currently we can see that there is a cold front passing through down there, just south of where my flight plan is. So, I mean, as long as it stays south, in theory, we should be okay. Now, weather that I can expect with the cold front, right, we got a little bit stronger weather, not as docile. Now, we do have a high pressure, which looks like it's moving in. Yep, so we've got a high pressure, which is moving in. And the front, the cold front, turns into what looks like a dissipating stationary front. And dissipating, how I'm getting that is there's kind of like dash, dot type of deal going on here. So we can see that it's kind of breaking up, or frontalysis. So frontalysis, again, just like breaking apart. So the storm seems to be weakening, which is nice. And then it moves out within 12 hours. However, now I do like to go 24 hours in advance. Okay, when I'm looking at these charts, just because I want to see the trends in the weather and see, okay, well, maybe we can expect, or just in case if I have to delay, I can go, okay, well, I looked at the weather 24 hours in advance, and this is what we can expect, right? So we've got, what is that? I can't remember off the top of my head. Fog. So we've got some fog rolling in. Okay, that's to the west of our flight plan, so that looks like it's pretty okay. Yeah, so 24 hours it stays away from us. We do have another cold front passing through, which is interesting here, which turns into a low pressure with a trough and parts of a stationary front. Interesting. So, for the most part, I would say that we're good. So, based off the prog chart, it looks okay, it looks good. Now, I'm going to look at my TAF map here. Okay. So I'm going to scroll in. Now, let me preface with TAFs. I don't like to just look at one. I like to look at many, pretty much every TAF in the surrounding area. So here we go. St. Augustine Airport. So from the 25th day at 1727 Zulu, it's valid from the 25th at 1800 to the 26th at 1800. Winds 080, 10, gusting 15 knots. Visibility greater than 6 statute miles. Scattered 6,000, broken 25,000. Okay, so our ceiling looks like it's generally staying around 25,000 feet. Okay, so from 26th, 00, so winds are pretty calm for the next little bit. Sky is clear. We got some clouds at 25,000 during this block. Winds do pick up at 1400 Zulu on the 26th of the day. So we definitely have to watch out for that. I can tell you right now that I'm comfortable flying in gusting 15 knot winds, but as a solo student, as a private pilot, your limits should be like right around 15 with like a 5 knot gust factor. So definitely keep that in mind. So DAB does not have a actually this is DAB. Just kidding. This airport down here, I think it's X50. I can never remember the names of these airports. It's terrible. Macy Ranch. So Macy Ranch does not have a TAF, so I'm going to use DABs here. So again, 25th day, 1720 Zulu. We've got validity time 25th 18, 26th 18. Okay. Wind 050 at 9 knots. So pretty calm, I guess you could say. Visibility greater than 6. Few 3,500, which is nice. Scattered 6,000, broken 13,000. So it looks like my ceiling, again, is around 13,000. So VFR. Now I come down here, look at our clouds, 8,000, 25,000, sky is clear, visibility greater than 6 statute miles. So that's pretty nice, right? Winds are relatively calm. I mean, 10 knots, the highest, is what it seems like. So, not too bad. Now, usually I look at TAFs, so we're going to look over here. I look at them in the entire surrounding area. So, pretty much the same validity time, same conditions. We got scattered at 6,000, broken 25,000. Winds are looking nice. Ooh, we got a variable right here. Clouds are high, and clear. So, right, it looks really, really nice. So I'm actually going to try and find where the thunderstorm, or where this cold front is affecting. But for now, everything down here looks like it's pretty dang clear. No IFR, no low-level clouds. We do have showers in the vicinity at Melbourne, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. However, we're not even going that far. Alright, so everything looks pretty good. I've checked the TAFs within the surrounding areas. Everything looks VFR. Winds are gorgeous. We do have some mist in here, though. But it looks like it's staying away from our departure airport. Okay. So now, on a little bit smaller scale, I am going to look at the current weather. Okay. So I have to go to here because it's, let's see. I do not like it when it does this. I don't know why. It just doesn't like my computer for some reason. But we've got KSGJ. Let's see if it pops up with the right one. Okay. SGJ and X50. Oh. Yep, X50. No METARs found for X. Okay, fine. We'll try it that way. Nope. She does not want to pull up. That's okay. We'll look at this one here. So SGJ's looks pretty dang good. So 25th day, 2256 Zulu, winds 100 at 6 knots, 10 statute miles, clear, temperature 19, dew point 16 degrees Celsius, altimeter 3008, remarks, precipitation discriminator, and pretty much the rest is like kind of irrelevant to determining whether or not I'm gonna make a no-go decision. So 10 statute miles, clear, VFR, again, pretty dang nice. Super excited. And also, I forgot to mention, like, I honestly forget that this exists too, but we have a TAFs feature in here and a decoded feature. So it's, yeah, that's cool. Interesting. Anyways, so that looks pretty good. Just basing my observations off of the TAF, everything looks pretty dang good here. So yeah. Next, I look at the ceiling and visibility charts here. Let's see if this works. I hope. Yes, it does work. So if we scroll out here, we can see that the thunderstorms, chance of rain stays southeast of us. We've got some storms down over here. Light rain. Oops. And over the ocean is pretty sketchy over that way, but within the area of our flight plan, I would rule that it looks pretty good in relations to storms. Now I'm going to push the time forward. Don't forget about that, definitely. Let me fix my thing here, my screen. Zoom out. It's like being really laggy today. I wonder if it's my internet connection or something, but we can see that the storm moves eastbound, which is really nice for us. And this little cell here is not going to touch where we're at. So it looks pretty good. Clouds. Wow, that is busy. Jeez. Alright, so we've got few at 8,000, skies clear. Cirrus. Few 8,000, skies clear. Scattered 7,000, clear above. Skies clear, Cirrus. So looking pretty dang good. Like, the weather is promising here. Just Cirrus, pretty much Cirrus. Yeah. And then we've got we'll get to some of the sigmets and stuff here in a second. But yeah, I mean, this looks pretty dang good for our area. Precip, we know there's going to be some precip down south, southeast specifically, just because we literally went through the ceiling visibility and clouds, as well as the prog chart with the radar. So chance of rain, this green is kind of all of a chance, as we can see. So chance is kind of like the lighter green, but if this was dark, it would be a little bit more of a likely. But honestly, this looks pretty good. So if I bring the storm or bring the dial back, we can see that it's pretty, I mean, it's concerning down in this area, but where we're at, it's very, very non-existent. cool. Now, something that I want to point out here is this red. I actually haven't seen, I don't recall seeing this red over Utah. I probably have, but I just don't remember. But this just alludes to severe thunderstorms. So obviously if we were flying down here, definitely a no-go. If I was flying in this southern half, I'd say absolutely not. Just because red is bad. Red is bad. We can also see, I believe this is also some fog. Yep, so fog here, that's what these little, I don't know, equal signs mean. Okay, thunderstorms, again, we pretty much have been looking at this the whole time. We're going to expect thunderstorm activity south of our flight plan, but none here. Now, temperature, so something interesting about the temperature here is it shows, like, surface, but I want it up at 3,500 feet, which is not going to happen on this. I do have to pull up a legend for this because it's hard. It's really hard to memorize the colors on this chart specifically. So it looks like it's, let's see here. I don't know. It's like a light orange, like not dark, not super light. So maybe 5968 degrees Fahrenheit, 1520 degrees Celsius, maybe like 17 degrees Celsius. So, I mean, not too bad. We could probably expect slight decrease in performance just because of a higher temperature, but we're at sea level, so that'll be pretty dang nice. So winds here, oh no, just kicked me out. I don't know why it won't let me zoom in anymore. Anyway, so we've got winds. I'm gonna set them for an hour in advance. And we're up at 3,000, so we're up at 3,000 there. We're cruising at 3,500, which we'll just stick to 3,000 for the winds. We can see that the winds are coming from 254 at 14 knots, which aren't too bad. So we're going to have a crosswind. We can expect to get up at altitude and hit a crosswind. But it's not too bad of a crosswind. I mean, it's not gusting, 25, 30. So, I mean, 254 at 14 isn't too bad. But for, like, a small plane, like a Cessna 150, geez. Getting blown off course, kind of crazy. Now, I do move the dial for 2 hours. We could still see it's around 14. Maybe? And same thing. So it's hovering right around 14 knots the whole time. Between 9 and 14 knots. Crosswind. So it's a crosswind. It's going to be a crosswind from our right if we're sitting in the airplane. Yeah, so not too bad. It does get... the winds do get lighter as you travel down south farther, which is interesting. Okay, so turbulence is important. If you remember, if you've ever learned, like, aircraft limitations and things like that, turbulence is super important. Like, do I know what the turbulence is like in my area? Do I know, what this could possibly affect the pilot, the plane, the passengers, right? So if I go an hour, we can expect some light turbulence over here. So light turbulence over our flight plan. And to show this, we've got some... I'll just zoom in. Why did it just do that to me? That is so bad. The thing is malfunctioning. Okay, so we can see that it's like a light green, light blue, which correlates to this section of the chart here. So again, pretty much nothing to worry about. We can expect some probably light chop. Now icing, I make sure that there is no icing because icing can get pretty hairy pretty quick, but it obviously looks like that we're out of an icing layer. Now while we're on it, let's look at some pyreps, because pyreps show you the most accurate weather, right? So we get these charts based off like predictions, educated guesses, weather equipment, stations. We've got meteorologists, meteorology reporting stations, ASOS, AWOS, right? Radar. But pyreps are the most accurate form of weather, simply due to the fact that it's a pilot. A pilot is seeing what this weather looks like. A pilot is saying, okay, this is really good or this is really bad. And they will make these reports and tell you what's going on. So the closest one to us is probably this guy right here. So, type Boeing, I think that's a Boeing 717. Turbulence, negligible. Icing, negligible. So, pretty much everything looks good over this area. We've got a guy down here. So it's light icing. Light rime is our problem here. And that tells me that clearly there is something that I want to watch out for here, and it's light rime. So we're obviously not flying down there, so we're staying up in this area, and general consensus is we don't have any sort of problems with where our flight plan is at, which is nice. Now, SIGMETs, I can see that we have one over here. It's issued by New York Oceanic. Thunderstorms. Top is 43,000 feet. That's pretty dang high. It's moving northeast at 20 knots. So moving relatively quickly. So we can expect that to basically shoot away from us, which it doesn't even affect where we're at anyways. And there is one over Cuba down here. It's moving east at 10 knots. So they're going this way across the screen, which is totally fine. And this isn't even going to hit us. It's not even going to affect us. Let's do some air mets really quick. So I like air mets in a sense that, again, general consensus of what's going on within the surrounding area. So we've got some turbulence low up here to the north, and again, I am at 3,000 feet. I'm 6 hours in advance. We'll travel backwards here in a second. So, G air met, low level wind shear due to airspeed loss or gain of 20 knots or more below 2,000 feet AGL. So that is clearly dangerous because 2,000 feet AGL is low to the terrain, right? Now I know sea level and 2,000 feet, you have 2,000 feet of buffer room, but still that could potentially pose a threat. But again, it's north of our flight plan here. Turbulence low, we've got moderate from 2,000 feet to 10,000 feet MSL. And mountain obscurations up north. Mountains obscured by precipitation and clouds. And up here we do have a freezing level base of 4,000 feet. But, of course, none of those look like they affect us with our flight plan here. Now I'm going to raise the altitude 6,000 feet, 9,000 feet. So it looks like we might have a freezing level. Come on. Why? At 12,000 feet down here. So if we had to climb to 9,000 feet, which we're not going to, we have a freezing level at 12,000 feet. Now, a lot of people, like, I understand that I would get questioned, like, well, why do you look at weather up north? Why do you look at weather down south? Why do you go, 6, 12, 24 hours in the future and up to, 9,000 feet, which is pretty much 6,000 feet above your cruising altitude? The reason I do that is to give myself a buffer room, right? So if for whatever happens, like I have to divert, I have to postpone the flight, I could go, okay, yeah, well, now of course, I would check the weather again if I had to postpone the flight, but I can go, okay, well, if I have to climb to 9,000 feet, I can climb to 9,000 feet because I'm out of freezing level, I'm out of air meds, sig meds. Now let's say I ended up having to circle for like a whole nother hour in the air. I can go, okay, well, I know the weather is going to be okay. I'm just waiting for this aircraft to get off the runway because he popped his tire or whatever reason. So there's pretty much reasons as to why I do everything and why I make my weather briefings like, a good 20 minutes long, is because I want to make sure that I am okay with flying. I want to make sure I understand what's happening with 500 mile radius of me, as well as a 24-hour time difference and an altitude of like plus or minus 6,000 feet, I just like to do it that way. You can do whatever you want, but so yeah, anyways, we've determined that everything looks pretty dang good according to our weather. We looked at SIGMETs, AirMets, prog charts, the GFA, observations, METAR staffs, fun things like that. So now that I know that we can make the cross country with the weather, now we can move on to our next part. But before I end this video, part 2.1, I wanted to place a couple emphasis on a few things. Checking the weather is important. I definitely encourage every single pilot to check the weather prior to doing any sort of flights, whether or not that's just local patterns, just hopping in the plane for one lap, or cross country 50 nautical miles, cross country 500 nautical miles. I please urge you to check the weather. Now, I definitely know that ForeFlight has weather capabilities, but I just want to put like a strong emphasis on using something that the NOAA has put out. I love the NOAA. They are amazing. The National Weather Service as well. So please try, I don't like to use ForeFlight just because I don't really know 100% where they get their information from, and with 100% certainty, how up to date is it, or are there any errors associated with it, things like that. I definitely do click through it, and I do 100% look through ForeFlight's weather briefing and go, okay, that kind of matches, and if I see something completely different, then I go back and cross-check it with 2 or 3 different sources and figure out what went wrong. But usually that's not necessarily the case. So just be very, very careful with where you get your weather from. I love aviationweather.gov, best source in my opinion. Now, disclaimer on this video, I did not cover every single possible nuance associated with weather, okay? I did not cover the winds aloft chart. things like that. And that's because I just want to get a general consensus of what my weather looks like before I dive deep into actually doing the performance and making my navigation log. Because my navigation log is going to take a long time. So, disclaimer, this is only like a sneak peek into weather and what you should be looking for and things like that. But I hope this helps to some sort of a degree. I will keep putting out these videos and working my way up to making this series complete, because I think it's important that every pilot understands the ways to flight plan by hand prior to using any sort of digital electronic flight bag. So I want to thank you very much for tuning in, and please like, subscribe, and share this video, and stay tuned for more.